smoke coming from the dang gun, or it was dust coming from the ceiling. Meanwhile, if there was dust and there is smoke and it's covering the cameras and stuff and nobody could see, then I'm pretty sure everybody knew that guns were ablazing, right? Obviously. Of course, there's much confusion surrounding that. All right? Different people heard very different things all over campus. All right? So I wanted to mention that. Cameras do cut out. Radios don't work for nothing. The reason I wanted to mention that is because it's as though there was a certain environment being cultivated. It's kind of funny because people talk about Parkland, and I heard them describing Parkland as such a safe place. There's going to be a lot of segments dedicated to how unsafe and unsavory Parkland could be, or Broward County in general. All right, Parkland is probably the nice part of a pretty messed up county. Right? So you got cameras, you got the radios, you got a cultivation of an environment that's just not, basically what it is extremely vulnerable to mass shooters. That's what it was. All right. Little did Nicholas Cruz know that as far as any school that he was going to shoot up in the country, this was probably the easiest school that you could have done it to. He didn't know that. Or maybe he did know that. I don't know. But the next exhibit I want to go to is this Hispanic girl who everybody's seen.
I saw some other kid. When the other kid who came into the classroom, he was wearing some type of thing, and like, I don't know, but it was like, I froze at that moment, because you never know, because when the gun is like pointed towards you and the thing, you don't know what to do, and you kind of just like pause, and you're just like, is this actually going to happen? But I felt like he was going after all the teachers, because a bunch of teachers got shot, but any of the kids who were in the way, they got shot there. Did you know?
And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway. Just a barrage of bullets.
But I felt like he was going after all the teachers, because a bunch of teachers got shot, but any of the kids who were in the way, they got shot there. Did you know?
And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway. Just a barrage of bullets.
All right. So there you go. That's what the Hispanic girl said. And I'm not sure what her name is, but the thing is, she's gone in hiding just like everybody else. I wanted to point her out just because there's something that she said that I've got caught up on. I got caught up on it ever since I heard it.
But I felt like he was going after all the teachers, because a bunch of teachers got shot, but any of the kids who were in the way, they got shot there. Did you know?
All right, she says something to the tune of, he wasn't aiming for children, all right, which would actually corroborate the whole official narrative in which he didn't even enter a classroom. You might say, well, it's impossible for a shooter to enter a classroom. No, it's very possible for a shooter to enter any classroom. He's got an AR-15, all right? Try to lock him out. Try to lock him out. It's not going to happen. All right, that's exactly why when the SWAT team got there, they just busted out the windows. They opened the door. It was with the greatest of ease. All right, he would easily be able to do that. In fact, he would want to do that if he was trying to cause a record number of mass casualties, right?
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get done.
So, but the Hispanic lady, she said something about he wasn't even aiming for kids, but he was, however, aiming for teachers. He was, how it seemed as though he was aiming for the teachers. I don't know why she thought that, but it gives me pause. All right, we might refer back to that later. All right. Actually, let's go ahead and cover that now. You know, teachers, like we mentioned before, sometimes they have the tendency to do as they're told, right? It's almost like a socialist system up in the school system, right? So they do what they're told. They don't really ask too many questions. But you do have to understand the nature of adults is that they're not as naive as children, and they won't exactly go along with the program, all right? After a while, if they understand it's a national emergency and everything's a hoax and everybody's lying, the adults are probably the most likely. As far as people who are compartmentalized, for example, the adults would be the most likely to come out and say, hey, look, I don't know what's going on. They told us it was a dang drill. So the reason I bring that up is in a situation where you're trying to perpetrate something upon America, you're trying to deceive everybody, and you're going to have the media help you in that, well, you might want to get rid of all the witnesses. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I don't know if it was 100% hoax or if it was a 75% hoax. But I can say, right now, I could say that it really wouldn't matter. It's still very, very much guilty, if that was the case. But I don't know what's the case. All right. And I do want to kind of mention this. We're about to get into Nicholas Cruz's testimony, his confession with John Curcio. All right, but before we do, I did want to mention, there are, I asked the question a while back, how many Broward deputies died in 2018? All right, some people would say 2. It was widely known that 2 of them died, kind of in quick succession, like a month after each other. All right, one died on April Fool's Day on a sofa. He's middle-aged. Who would have ever seen that coming? He looks like he's in excellent shape. Who would have ever seen that coming? He just plumb dies. Is there a big investigation? Hell no. No, there isn't. Oh, was he talking stuff about the Parkland shooting? Yes, he was. All right, so that guy is no longer, maybe he was made up, maybe he never existed, but it seems as though he died and there was no investigation. And you might think that there would be, because he is a Broward deputy. And he looks like he's in great shape, man. The next guy who dies, guess what? He also looks like he's pretty good shape. He's also he's not that old, right? Someone in his late 50s. He also winds up dying. No, there's not a real investigation or anything like that. They talk about it in the paper, but they don't talk about the reason why he dies. All right, so some people are dead. I don't know if it has anything to do with Parkland. All right, of course, the teachers, they have everything to do with Parkland. Some people are dead. And I wanted to bring that up. All right, and with that being said, let's go ahead and get into Nicholas Cruz's testimony. Actually, before we get into the Cruz testimony, let's go ahead and let's talk about this, because it seems appropriate. A Nazar Hamzy. We got a Nazar Hamzy, and I got real suspicious of him. A lot of people were real suspicious of him. I gotta let you know. If you type in Google, you'll see there was people. They were suspicious of him, even especially after the shooting, the Parkland shooting, right? But, he's gone under the radar. I haven't heard from him in a long time, all right? I know that he's changed organizations and this and that. You can see that on the internet. But I haven't heard from him. I used to hear from him a lot. He used to be on a lot of the internet, podcasts, this and that, television shows. So I thought I'd bring him up just because it's interesting. I can't really tie him to the Parkland shooting. I got to let y'all know. I haven't seen anything that ties him to it at all. All right? But it's just kind of interesting that, his connections, the fact that Sheriff Israel wanted him so bad, and we'll get into it, but, wanted him against the advisement of certain other people who all advised that they do not let him as a deputy on, and there's people protesting about it, but Sheriff Israel had to have Hamzy on. And like I said, I can't tie him to the Parkland shooting necessarily, but I can tie him to pedophiles and stuff like this guy. I can tie him to Siraj Wahaj, by the way, he's the father of that dude running that militant school shooter compound over there in New Mexico. They're both named Siraj Wahaj. It's a made-up name. It's not even a real name. I think his name is Jeffrey. All right. I wanted to bring that up because, that's technically, in an indirect way, they do. Because he lives in Broward. And he just happens to be tied up with people who happen to be tied up with people who are training people to shoot up schools and post offices and everything else, right? I wanted to bring him up, but like I said, I can't tie him directly to the Parkland shooting. All right? Just keep that in mind. But I did want to talk about Nicholas Cruz's testimony. Let's get into it.
Was total system failures.
All right, y'all. In this particular part, the idea of voices comes up in the conversation. And as you'll note a little bit further, the voices, according to Nicholas Cruz, who could be lying, who could be an actor, according to Nicholas Cruz, the voice in his head started way back when his adopted father died. Real briefly, if there were, say, targeted individuals, a very good prospect for a targeted individual, if you were going to target certain individuals such as children, would be a child whose father has passed or is not there. All right, so to continue. All right, on this page, you have basically a voice entering Nicholas Cruz's head, and from time to time, it whispers mantras, such as burn, kill, destroy, general mayhem type stuff. It tells them to hurt people, not specifically, but just to hurt people in general. All right, on this particular part, you can see either Nicholas Cruz is lying or acting, but he does mention how the voice, this voice, who happens to be a young man, and it's only one voice over and over. This voice actually tells him to do specific things, to include take an Uber to the place. All right, so it's instructing him about certain things, and more likely this voice actually told him to create that all right, in this particular part of the transcript, John Curcio, as he does many times, is kind of showing you how much of a greaseball he is, how much his opinion actually matters up in this confession, if you will. All right, so he is a greaseball, and he's basically denying Nicholas Cruz of any legitimacy, which, I mean, maybe some people would, some people wouldn't. John Curcio pretty much is trying to convince Nicholas Cruz that he is the voice telling him to do these bad things, which could be the case, but at the same time, it's not really John Curcio's place, and it's very irritating for him to be doing this. All right, on this particular page, you have Nicholas Cruz, and he's kind of explaining the best he can that a voice is coming inside his head. All right. He's trying to explain that it's a bad side and it's shooting inside his head. He really doesn't know what he's talking about. All right. And Detective Curcio, again, for whatever reason, is applying his own opinion and telling Nicholas Cruz, it's all you. It's all you. Mind you, there is no attorney present. Mind you, this is a child, by the way. And so Greaseball John Curcio, he's like, no, this is you. It's just you. It's just you. There is no such thing as a voice. And John Curcio there's no way that he could know that. All right, so to continue. Right here, you'll notice, and you'll notice all throughout the transcript, there's so many things redacted, and who's to say was redacted? I mean, we shouldn't honestly be looking at any of this transcript at all. But they wanted this to be public and everything, so they just redacted certain parts, very, very large parts. All right. So in this particular page, you see that Detective John Curcio, pretty much he's denying that any voices, that it's even possible for Nicholas Cruz to be hearing voices that are not his own. All right. And then, he kind of implies that everybody's got a bad side. All right. So Nicholas Cruz, who may be an actor, I don't know, he seems very confused at this. It's almost as though he seems to think that John Curcio is explaining that everybody has this random voice shot in their head that they hear from time to time. And Nicholas Cruz, he asks, do they really? Because, of course, that's unbelievable. Because the truth is, no, people typically don't have voices shot into their head from time to time. So, to continue. All right, on this page right here, talks about the park. If you might have heard that Nicholas Cruz allegedly was planning to shoot up a park, and this was sometime before the school. He wound up not doing it. So, as you can read from the transcript, he basically, according to Nicholas Cruz, was being convinced by the voice to go to this park, to go to any park, and shoot up people. Nicholas Cruz, he wound up not doing it because he didn't really want to do it. He wound up, as he describes it, being a coward and basically flaking out of it and stuff like that because he really didn't want to do it, which is really interesting. He's got an internal battle within himself in which, there's a voice telling him to do stuff and stuff that he really doesn't want to do. All right, so a few times, to include this time, Nicholas Cruz, he's trying to explain again about the demons that he's hearing, right? And again, as though John Curcio is all-knowing, as though he's omnipresent and everything, he's telling Nicholas Cruz, he's basically implying, look, you're freaking lying, and you are the voice, and basically, you know what I'm saying? He said, oh, it disrespected you, so your demon came out. So you have a demon, you are the demon. And so he disrespected you. And so that's when you flew into a violent rage, basically. All right. Forever stating his opinion. It's John Curcio. So to continue. All right here on this page, you got Nicholas Cruz, and he's asking again if he could see a psychologist. He's really trying to figure out what the heck is going wrong with them, and he can't figure it out. All right here is another page in which Nicholas Cruz is talking about how the voice started after his father had died, 2004 and 2005. So that would note that it's been a long build-up to this, right? Quite a bit of cultivation. That is, unless Nicholas Cruz is lying and he's an actor, right? He's describing a long time. He's describing that it's a man's voice. Does it sound like Curcio's asked him, does it sound like anybody's ever met? In which Nicholas Cruz says, no, but it's the same voice over and over. All right, now this one is particularly crucial because Nicholas Cruz, without ever mentioning the words targeted individual or that he might be being targeted, Nicholas Cruz describes how the voice is basically a daily occurrence, right? Regularly, he'll hear the voice coming up at lunchtime. All right? However strange that sounds to you. And then once again, during nighttime when he's about to go sleeping. Now, hypothetically, in the case where this kind of technology exists where you could shoot it at people, and then they could hear voices in their brain. I mean, it really does exist, and it's well documented. But hypothetically, if people were implementing that on others, right? This would be most likely is that they would get this voice in their head certain times of the day. Why? Because, I don't know, maybe that person running the machine, maybe they're busy. Maybe they don't have all day to be shooting voices into each individual's head. So on a schedule, they just come by maybe during noontime, shoot voices into the guy's head, then take off, man. And then, later on, maybe when he's sleeping, shoot more voices in his head. The reason why is because you do it while he's sleeping is because he's still. He's not moving. You can point the machine directly at him. All right? And he describes how, when he's moving, the voices, well, it's just not so clear anymore. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense, right? If someone had imaginary voices in their head, it wouldn't matter whether or not they were moving. Right? If they have a machine pointing at them that's actually physically putting voices in their head, it's going to be much more difficult when they are moving. All right, anyways, to continue. All right here. It's another point in which, they're talking about the voice. John Curcio eventually asks Nicholas Cruz, why does he listen to this voice? It's a voice that tells him to burn, kill, destroy. It's a voice that's not too savory and stuff like this. Telling him to do stuff that he typically doesn't want to do. Why does he listen to it? And I want to finish off on this one, although there's other bits of the transcript that we can read that will support what it is I'm talking about. I wanted to just go ahead and stop on this one to point out that Nicholas Cruz, he wound up creating something of a relationship with this voice that was coming into his head. And the reason is, even though the voice is telling him to do bad things and the voice is kind of like bullying Nicholas Cruz for the most part, the reason that Nicholas Cruz kind of dealt with it or accepted it was that he was terribly lonely. All right, and I just thought I would finish off on that point. But let's go ahead and finish up the video. All right, so that was just a taste, like I said, of some of the things that I read out. Very interesting. A lot of people have already read the whole transcript and gone over the videos and stuff. Some people haven't, so I thought I would share that. I get the feeling, I don't know, but I do get the feeling, holler at me if you hear me, that a lot of 100% hoaxers haven't exactly read through this particular part of the transcript. All right, and I don't know if they have or haven't, but the thing is, before we get out of here, what I wanted to point out is it's just very interesting. It's very intriguing, the types of things that Nicholas Cruz says during his so-called confession, all right? It's very interesting how John Curcio acts like a damn greaseball. Like, here's the thing about John Curcio, just to put it to bed, he's supposed to be an investigator. Like, he's supposed to be asking questions. Meanwhile, half of what John Curcio says is whether or not he believes Nicholas Cruz. Like, it even matters. What's the point of him telling Nicholas Cruz over and over that he doesn't believe him? Can you just write down the details on your piece of paper because that's your job, all right? John Curcio is a damn greaseball who doesn't really understand what his job is, all right? And it does seem as though he's very mentally manipulative, especially at key points when you're talking about the voices in Nicholas Cruz's head. When you talk about the voices, John Curcio almost becomes very defensive, it seems. And that'll have to make you wonder why. But you got Nicholas Cruz. And what's interesting about him is, okay, he could be an actor. And if he is an actor, he's like Leonardo DiCaprio, all right, y'all? Minus the molestation. Unfortunately. Fortunately for Nicholas Cruz, he's kind of like, if he's an actor, he deserves all sort of Oscars.
right? Because what's interesting about him is he describes his experience in the confession, and it's like 100% right on target of what you would expect from a targeted individual. Like, for the people who do know what targeted individuals are, and cyber harassment and this and that, right? He sounds 100% right on like a targeted individual. And you know what's also interesting is he never brings up the word targeted. All right. If you had to guess, this young boy who's an actor, he's laying down an Oscar performance. He's never heard of targeted individuals. He doesn't. He's never heard of it. But yeah, and still he's describing it down to a T. All right, and he's describing an experience that's well over a decade long. Y'all, earlier we were talking about a cultivation of an environment, all right, for 10 years plus long of just the school itself being absolutely vulnerable. Of course, Broward County, if you knew anything about it, has all sort of drug problems. Number two, I mean, that might seem like, but it is kind of appropriate to talk about. All right, you got teachers that seem to be aimed for. All right, you got all sort of children acting. You got these weird, outrageous rituals, sacrificial rituals that these children do anyways already. You got all sort of confusion. You got a cultivation of an environment where anything can happen. You got this young boy describing targeted individuals and seemingly not knowing what the hell a targeted individual is. All right, so there's a lot of different factors. This is the reason. These are some of the reasons, and there's more reasons why I just really can't commit to that 100% hoax. I don't know if this clarifies anything for any of y'all. All right, but holler if you hear me. I know this is kind of a long video. I appreciate y'all. I got to get ready for work.